It's patch 3.25, Settlers of Kalguur. Let's see how we are going to spin to win with the Cyclone Slayer build. First things first, let's actually just have a little chat and look at how the build is going to play and also the pros and cons. So you may be aware that Cyclone is one of Path of Exile's most iconic skills in the game. And it is, of course, long loved by everyone for its spin to win playstyle. Now, whilst Cyclone in itself is really well played, it's actually going to be even more fun in the Cyclone of Tumult. This is basically a ton of free damage, as long as we can counteract its downsides, which are a little bit less movement speed. We can use Replica Stampede or the regular Stampede, the gear items, and it doesn't really matter which one we get. We just want to get the cheapest one and get it on our build. It's really, really enjoyable and easy to play because we get to spin around just holding out right click, and it's a walking simulator. Because we do damage while moving, this just creates an unparalleled amount of dopamine because it just does really good damage and it's just really fun and has good survivability. It is one of the best playstyles in the entire game. It goes from early to end game really quite efficiently and does good damage and also defenses. The only downsides I would say is that it does rely on weapons, it does require some specific gear to get our resistances and attributes, and it can be very, very level hungry. Super good for new players, really easy playstyle, gearing's okay, and that's pretty much all there is to it. If you're wondering how the build is actually put together, it's pure physical damage build, which we can use staves because it enables the shockwave support gem, whereas before, going for staves actually introduced problems to get early game weapons. They are now at a really good power point where they're going to do absolutely fine until you can actually craft your end game weapons and introduce so many other benefits. Outside of actually cycloning around, it doesn't really require many button presses outside of a singular press of our Pride aura, which we're going to be linking to our Guardian's Blessing support and dropping a war banner on tougher bosses and rares if we need to. So now that we've actually seen what this build is all about, how are we going to actually gem it up? Well, there is a PoB link in the description, of course, and you can get this going quite quickly. At early game, just use Ground Slam with a chance to bleed. Once you get to about level 8 to 12, you can start putting a few more things on here. You can then put your War Banner on, and you can get a Leap Slam with faster attacks. And we're basically just kind of slamming around at this point. And then at about level 40, we can then finally go over to Cyclone. And this is where we're really going to change the build around. Again, these are all segmented in the PoB link I have put in the description, so you can see what you're doing at level 1 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 24, 24 to 38, and then when we actually then get our Cyclone, and then mid-game and end-game. So you've got different chapters that I've put this all together so you can really see what is going on and when and follow it through. So hopefully that is helpful for you. So, of course, Cyclone is going to be in our 6th link. We're putting melee physical damage on here, Brutality, Pulverize, Shockwave, and Impale. So we're impaling our enemies with our Cyclone. We're keeping the Leap Slam from earlier levels, putting on faster attacks, maim, and momentum. And then we're going to put a Cold Snap cast when damage is taken, just so we can get a little bit back when we're, taking any damage. And then we're going to put Assassin's Mark with Life Tap and Mark on hit on our auras, basically cursing them so that we can do more damage from critical hits. And of course, Mark on hit is going to mean that we're going to be doing it on hit. So we can, again, just be spinning around, actually debuffing our enemies just at such ease, in my opinion. Now, I wanted to ask you guys a question in this build. In my other videos, I've gone through at absolute depth, like what every single gem, etc. does. However, with the PoB link in the description and giving you these kind of options here and showing you how to put it together, I wanted to ask you guys, do you want me to go really in depth with why we're using each gem, etc.? I don't know if most people watching this are going to be like, okay, cool, yep, I understand why we're using, Brutality and Pulverize, etc. and War Banner. and like things like that. Or if you're happy with me just kind of going over like briefly why we're using them, and like I just did with the curses. I just am new to doing PoE videos, and I really want to know what you guys need and want to know, or how far I should go into things, because I really don't know at this point. I do World of Warcraft videos on my other channel, and I also do like Diablo as well on this ARPG channel. So I really do want your feedback if possible. Please and thank you. But those are the gems and the path we are taking to get them. Now moving on to the gear, flasks and jewels that we're going to want in this build. If I start off by showing you what we're getting when we're really getting to Cyclone, and then I guess we can go to like the kind of end game build. So a lot of yellows, obviously at this point. The only really uniques we're going to have is like a Carnage Heart. Adding to attributes, elemental resistances, I cannot stress enough, elemental resistances are super important, and this game is built around having a lot of them. Capping them out, you want more than 75%, and then some chaos resistances where you can get them. I feel like a lot of people, beginner and veteran alike, do often forget this detail. We're going to get increased damage while leeching, and then we're also going to do physical attack damage actually being leeched as well on this, meaning that it kind of has a symbiotic relationship with itself on the stats here. Fire and cold resistances, like I said, more and more resistances. Putting these on our rings, depending on the jewel in the ring, you can see what resistances you're getting if you didn't know. And this is a really good place where we can get a lot of large percentage on resistances on those rings. Adding life and movement speed on the boots. Rezlafla's coil on the belt, increased stun duration on enemies with a massive impact of strength, and adding maximum life there. Again, more resistances can be put on the gloves, and we're going to be putting a block chance attack damage while wielding a staff on there. Remember, I did say we are going to be using a stave. It's actually going to work really, really well in this build, whereas it never used to. And then generally going on to end game, I've even called it that, we're going to want a lot of crit. You can see here, increased critical strike damage. We're going for the Abyssus on the helm. More critical strike damage. The Stampede on the boots. Allocates Disciple of the Unyielding for you. And then the Celestial Brace as well. Increase armor, increase attack speed per fortification. Melee hits from strike skills will also fortify on here. And then again, just putting a crazy amount of resistances on our rings, and some on our amulet as well. But we're trying to get as much crit as possible. Crit, crit, crit is the big word of the day for this Cyclone build in 3.25 as well. I've gone for the Flagellant's Quicksilver Flask of the Dove, meaning we're going to gain 3 charges when we're hit by an enemy. We are obviously given very close area to our enemy in this build, and increased attack speed during the effect, which will be amazing with this Cyclone build. Rumi's Concoction here, increasing block and spell damage. Again, gaining charges when we're hit is going to be really good. We're getting really up close and personal. Increased armor during effect. Reduced effect of curses on us. And then, of course, a big juicy life flask on there for our 5th one. Haven't got a lot of gems on this build. We're going for a lot of crit, funnily that, on the gems that we have. Maximum life, resistances, and crit. That's really all you're going for on here, as much as you can. Lastly then, what are we doing for all our other bits and bobs in this Cyclone build for 3.25, like Ascendancy, Pantheon, and also those deadly Bandits in Act 2? So, this is the Ascendancy we're going for here. I'm going to explain why and in what order. Number 1, we're going to go attack damage and area of effect, and then impact. 50% increased global accuracy rating. Adding 0.4 meters to melee strike range. Basically, what we're doing here is just increasing the area of effect that our Cyclone is going to do, making it from a small Cyclone to a big Cyclone. And that is what I love about Slayer. Area of effect builds work so well with Slayer, with these Ascendancies. Dealing up to 15% more melee damage to enemies based on proximity, and we're going to be very close in, of course. Then we're going to come up with attack damage and life leech and brutal fervor, 100% increased maximum recovery per life leech, and then life leech effects are not removed when unreserved life is also then filled, with a 10% reduced damage when leeching. Where we're getting really up close and personal with our enemies and therefore leeching, this is also then going to have a duo effect of then reducing our damage that we're taking when we are cycloning through them. Third point, we're coming up, well, 2.5, attack damage and more life leech, and then into Endless Hunger, where 20% of our overkill damage is also going to be leeched as life as well. 20% increased attack speed while leeching, cannot be stunned while leeching, and you're unaffected by bleeding while leeching as well. Lastly, we're coming up to attack damage and attack speed. Again, faster whirlwinds. 10% more damage if you've killed recently, which I bet you have. Cannot take reflected physical damage, and 20% more damage with hits and ailments against unique enemies, which we love. And well, I mean, I say that it's not as exciting as actually some of the others, but we still love it. And then on the Pantheon gods you're going to be taking, Major God, Soul of the Brine King. Minor God will be a Berath. I just think these are pretty standard, really, and good choices here. And then for our bandits, because we're not going like super duper on jewels and passives here in this build, I would say to help a Lyra. What do you get from this? Well, you get more resistances. And like I said earlier, these are often overlooked and are really, really needed at end game and are going to come in massively full, especially in a build like this. And that is pretty much it, guys. That is how you're going to play Slayer, Whirlwind, or Whirlwind Slayer in patch 3.25 Settlers of Kalguur. Hopefully it was helpful for you. If you are looking for other builds, click this playlist here. I'm doing a hell of a lot of them for you. And if you would even consider it, please do consider joining my Patreon, which really helps support the channel. And I can give you any one-on-one support you may need over there with these builds. And if there's nothing else, I hope you have a massive amount of fun in this league.